Hello everyone, Jonesy here. In this video, you'll be learning by example how to design and style the main page of your website using React and CSS. By the end of this tutorial, you will have a page that looks like this. I decided to create my homepage with blog posts similar to Reddit, so it will look something like this, but not exactly. Let's get started. We know that we would like blog posts to render on our page. Each post is contained inside of a card, so we need to create some cards to show visually. To do that, add a React component called info cards to render out every blog post we have. Class info cards extends react.component. Now we have our class component, but where do we go from there? How do we know what to do next? Well, we want these cards to render out, so add the render method. Every render method needs a return. Inside of return is where the HTML, tags, and JavaScript go that will be rendered onto the screen. For now, I'm just going to put a div. Each card needs information to show visually. Typically, that would be pulled from a backend server, but I will not be getting into any backend development in this tutorial. Instead, I'm going to just create the data right in the state of the constructor of our component. So, create the constructor, give it props, and always pass the props into super by default. Now add the state. We need an array inside that has objects with all the data for our blog posts. You can think of this as a list of blog posts. Each object will be a blog post with an ID, the body text, blogger's first name, last name, their title, and the date it was posted. This is not super important because it is just creating dummy data. So I will speed the video past this part. I'm just going to copy and paste until I have 5 objects in the list. Now, in order to show this data visually, we need to loop through this list of objects one by one and render them. To do this, we need to use JavaScript. To use JavaScript inside of a div, put brackets like this. The method for looping through an array in JavaScript is the map method. So, take the array, which is this.state.postData, and call map. Inside of map, you get each post object. To render each object out, put another return. Inside, we will define the visuals for each individual card. We basically just want to create a box right here, a box that defines a card or a blog post, whatever you would like to call it. So, add a div and give it a style using class name. I'll call it info card. This div combined with the CSS that we will define in a minute will create visuals for our card. Also, you must add a key prop like so, or else you will get an error in the console. This is just how the map function works. Alright, let's go ahead and create the CSS file for our home page. First, import it up top. Then, actually create it over here in the CSS modules folder. So far, we have only defined one style inside of home, so there's only one to create right now. And that is info card. Obviously, it is a card, so let's give it a width of 40 em and a min height of 5 em. I used min height so that it will not get any smaller than that. I want this card to have a border of 1 pixel with solid lines that are light gray. I want the card to be a little bit rounded. To do that, I'm going to use a border radius of 1%. I am going to create some margins for the card. I will put 0 for the top margin, auto for the left and right, and 0.5 em for bottom. I put 0.5 EM for bottom to give space between each card in the list. I put auto in order to center each card on the screen. I recommend you play with this to see what I mean instead of blindly trusting my word. Add a background color of white. Now, if we save this, it will still not show. This is because our home component is shown, but we haven't added info cards inside of home yet. So, to do that, I'm going to put a div, and inside the div, put info cards. If you save this and look, you should see something like this. Sweet, we have a list of cards. Doesn't look amazing, but we can fix that. The first two things that stick out to me is that we need a margin at the very top to fill some space above the first card, and we need to change the color of the background since our cards are white. I do not have a white background because before making this video, I wrote some code, and I will make sure that I go and show that to you. To add space above that very first card, you can add another style to this div and call it container. Define this style in the CSS file and give it a margin top of maybe 20 pixels. Then, to change the background color, go into app.css, delete anything in there, and add body. Inside, add a background color like so. This is a gray color. Save it. Awesome. Now we just need to fill these cards with our data of each post. The question is, how do we want to show this data right here visually? Well, anytime you do something like this, you just want to keep trying things until it looks right. Going back inside of info cards, this div has all of the cards nested inside it. This div defines one single card. So let's work on that. Let's create a div for showing the information of the user. So the style will be called info user. Inside of that, put a div for the user's image with its own style, of course. Yet again, inside of that, put an actual image tag. To use this, we need an image. So I just downloaded a default avatar image from the internet. I'm going to create a folder called images inside of the public folder and then drag my image into it. Now, let's add some props to the image tag. Add source equals brackets process.env.public_URL, which just gives the public folder's directory. Then add /images/avatar.png, or whatever the name of your picture is. Add alt equals missing image. This shows whenever it cannot find your image. Last, just add a width and height of 40 pixels so our picture is not huge. Beside our image, we want to put the name and title of this user. Create another div with a class name of user text. Add a p tag and put brackets inside to use JavaScript. For each post, we want the first name and a space, then the last name, also a comma with a space, then the user's title. Next, we want to show the date the user posted this post. Just make another p tag with answered on brackets post.postdate. Now the last thing we want to show visually is the text of the blog post. So just use a p tag with a style of info text. Inside, use JavaScript to add the text, post.body. If you save and look, this should look awful since we haven't created the styles yet, but there should be new info on the screen. Actually, there's an error. Add styles.userText. Now check again. Alright, so clearly we need to add some CSS. Create info user with a display of block and a margin like so. To get the margins right, you just have to keep playing around with numbers. I have already played around a bit before making this video, so these should be good margins. I like to always comment top, right, bottom, left, so I can remember the order of the margins. Let's do the user image div style, float it to the left. For the actual image, give it a display of block. For the name and the title, make the font size small and a margin like so. Lastly, give info text a margin like so. If we save, it looks pretty good. Main issue is that we need to add some space at the top of each card, which should be easy. Just go into the CSS, inside of info user, make the top margin a size of 1 EM, and save. Now that looks good. If you want to, you can create sidebars and a footer in the similar way that you created the header at the top. This is the end of the tutorial series. My goal was to help you get started with web programming by making this series as simple as possible. If I actually happen to teach you something, feel free to like and subscribe so that I can continue making more for you. See you later. Jonesy out.